So I get to control a property. I could live in it, or I could fill it with other renters. That's what that does, but it doesn't transfer the title to me. So it still technically belongs to, like legally belongs to the seller until I exercise my option and actually purchase the house. But I'm not interested in owning the house. I'm interested in controlling the house. I want to lock in a price now so that I can capture any appreciation. But I don't necessarily want to receive the tax bill, which is all the title is good for.
So I'm here with Anam Paiseanta, and he's going to tell us something about real estate investing and different ways that you can buy and sell houses without necessarily needing to own them in the meantime. How's it going?
I'm doing well. Beautiful day here in Acapulco.
Yep, ready for Anarchapulco conference next weekend.
Psyched.
Yep. So you're going to be speaking there as well, yeah?
I'll be telling the world about the Connector app that is due out soon.
All right, great.
Yeah.
What's that about?
The Connector app allows people to find other people, businesses, dates, events based on their affinities that they build into a profile when they set it up on a map. So you'll be able to look at a map and filter. You might want to find someone to be friends with that's also into mountain biking. So you would use a filter word, mountain biking, which is in the list, or any filter word. And then everyone else disappears except mountain bikers that are near you.
So it's like you could walk into a party and hold up your phone and see everyone who's into the same thing as you.
Yeah. It's made to connect people who have common affinities. Yeah.
Yeah, badass. Okay, cool. So last night you were telling me about real estate and how you can say live for free, live rent free. How would you go about that?
Well, I could explain all the theory about it, but I'll just tell you about my exact situation.
Yep, sure.
So in Washington State, I have a house that I acquired with a lease and an option. So I was able to make an agreement with the owner that I would pay a monthly payment to her. And then at some point in the next 2 years, I have the option to purchase the house at, this particular house happens to be $185,000 US, which was a good deal. And so I don't have to buy the house, but I'm the only one that's able to buy the house at that price within that time. So that's an option. And so it's a large house and it has extra rooms in it. So to make that contract between her and I a legitimate contract, there has to be an exchange of money. So I give her $10.
Yep.
And then I was able to move in, take control of the house. And then I rented out the other 3 rooms in the house to tenants. And so my payment on the house is about $1,200. And I rent out the other 3 rooms for $400 each. And they're all on the other side of the house and they all share their own bathroom. And my room has its own door to the outside, its own bathroom. It's almost like a little apartment of its own. So I get this giant house. The other 3 tenants are usually not there. And when they are, they're in their rooms. We don't have a TV or radios in the common areas. Occasionally I'll bump into them in the kitchen, or in the dining room. But for the most part, it really seems like it's just a large house all to myself, except I am not paying for it. So that house is about to close. I've sold it. I never have to actually go get my own money to close the deal. I've sold my option to another party. That will close in the end of February for $250,000.
Right.
And so I still am obligated to pay the the woman who sold the house to me, sold the option to me for 185, I have to give her that 185 still, and then I get to keep the rest.
Right.
So I moved in, controlled the house, was able to live in it for a few years, never had to pay rent or a mortgage payment on it. And then I sold my option on it and made $65,000 minus closing costs. And so total, it cost me $10.
Nice. $10 to buy the option and the lease. Yeah. So what is her motivation? What is the reason that she wants to enter into this lease option?
Her situation was that she was ready to retire. She had a plan to move to the other side of the country. So Washington State's on the West Coast, and she wanted to live in, I think, South Carolina. And she was dead set that when her grandson got out of high school on the 7th of June, she really was intent on having her moving van packed and drive to her new destination. And so her retirement was happening. She had already had the house listed with the real estate agent for about 6 months. And lucky for me, it was a very inept real estate agent, so the house never sold, which increased her motivation. And so I advertise with billboards and
your website?
My website, of course, and signs around town.
Saying we buy houses.
That's it, exactly. We buy houses or stop foreclosure or just trying to let people know how we can help them, fast cash for house, that sort of thing. Yeah, so when she called me, I was on my way to another appointment and I just said, you know what, I'll call this one back. And it was a really cool situation. I just stopped by and she told me everything that she needed. And I said, well, I don't know if this would work, but what if I could do this for you? Would that solve your problems? And it was an exact match. So I've done so many different kinds of real estate deals now that there isn't a situation that someone's in that if they explain it clearly to me, I can't buy their house with a technique that solves their problems.
Right.
So that's really the approach that I have is I come in and they want to show me the house. They think, the seller thinks it's about the house.
Yep.
But for me, it's really about building rapport with them so that they feel comfortable enough to tell me what their problem is and be honest about it. Once they do that, I can come up with a solution for them. And if that solution is profitable as well, we move forward. If me buying their house isn't the best solution for them, let's say they have a retail house or they're not very motivated, then I can refer them to one of the competent realtors that's in my network.
Oh, okay. So even if you can't help them directly, you can still refer them to someone who might be able to.
Not every house is an investment market house. Some of them are retail market houses where that has curb appeal. They don't have problems with the payments. They don't have some other life circumstance that's really motivating them. Those situations I refer to a realtor because they deal with full-priced houses.
So, like you were saying about building rapport and finding out the problem and finding a solution, this is kind of consultative selling. Do you have experience in sales?
Well, just selling houses.
Yeah. Okay. Before you got into real estate, you didn't have any other sales experience?
No.
Yep.
No, and this isn't about being like a salesperson.
Yeah.
With this scenario,
yep,
they call me and I just listen to them. I say, well, this seems like a really nice house. Why would you want to sell it? Or how come it hasn't already sold? And the further they get into explaining their situation, the more it really is them selling me. They are trying to tell me why I need to buy the house in a way. And then after they explain their issues, I just say, well, this is one possible solution that I know. Does that sound like a fit to you? And so there's not really any selling. It's just getting the person to the point of clear and honest communication.
Yep.
And then presenting a possible solution to them. And if they like it, then we move forward with that idea. And so my what led me into this is that I had a house, maybe 20-something years ago now, that I had difficulty selling. And I tried to sell it on my own, for sale by owner, with a sign in the yard and ad in the newspaper, and that didn't work. And it was just a slow time in the market and kind of a low demand area of town, right? So I tried a realtor after that, and that didn't work either. So I went to the bookstore and looked at books about other techniques. I was like, there must be some kind of way to hack house sales. And so I came up with information about lease options. And I thought, wow, if I could let somebody move in now and have up to 2 years before they have to give me the cash, and they just make me a monthly rental payment until then, that'll give them time to clean up their credit or do whatever is required for them to qualify for their bank loan. And what I do know about economics is that if you increase the demand by increasing the size of your audience, right? So now I'm selling not only to people with bank loans, but also to people who don't yet qualify for bank loans.
Okay, because they don't have to have that immediacy. Like they don't have to have everything available right now.
Right.
It can be any time in the next 2 years, or
Right.
even longer.
Yeah. So it's people who qualify for a bank loan and people who will if they work on it. So that's a larger audience, so that increases the price.
Yep.
And so it increases the demand, and I still only have one house, so the supply doesn't go up, just the demand does, so the price goes up. So lease options are great because it's a great way to help. Everybody needs housing, and it's a great way to help people when you sell, if you can. And as an investor, I can. I have more than one house, so I can afford to sell in this way. And it's a clever way to buy houses as well, because it's always best to reserve your capital that you have for deals that require immediate cash. Those are like heavily discounted houses, like wholesale properties. So I never use my own cash unless it's a severe discount on a property with a lot of potential.
And in that case, would you buy the house outright in a lot of cases, or would you use credit? It really depends on the
If someone
case.
calls me and they have a house that they're willing to severely discount and they need cash right now, yeah, I'll come with a suitcase full of cash.
So when I read Robert Kiyosaki, he normally says stuff like, you look at 100 houses and then you look at maybe buying one, and if that one doesn't work out, go look at another 100. But in your case, you've got it all set up, so the leads that you've got are kind of pre-screened, because these people already have, they're already looking to sell. Maybe they're in a desperate situation, or they need to move it quickly.
Exactly.
So I guess your like conversion rate, if you will, is going to be a lot higher than 1%, or maybe 20-40% or something like that.
Yeah, there's a totally different dynamic between active and passive marketing. So with active marketing, the way Robert Kiyosaki is talking about in this, look at 100, make offers on 10, buy 2 or buy 1. So with active marketing, where you're chasing the seller, that's like a numbers game. And with passive marketing, having the sellers call me and try to convince me to buy the house, it's completely different. Like there's not really any negotiation. And they don't have a bunch of barriers. So when you're approaching a seller and you're chasing them, you're doing active marketing, right? It's very difficult to break through all their barriers about their situation or telling you what exactly they need. But when a seller calls me and is from my passive marketing, they are trying to convince me to buy the house. They tell me exactly how much they owe on the house. They tell me exactly how long it's been listed before. They tell me everything about their personal situation that's motivating them. So we get right down to, how can I help you? Instead of having to deal with a lot of the seller's defenses that are keeping you from having honest communication. And so, yeah, the conversion rate's way higher. Yeah, it's probably over 50%. For a while there in 2013, I had 100%. Everybody that called me sold me a house.
Okay, fantastic.
Yeah.
So you have people contacting you who are looking to sell houses. You also have people contacting you who are looking to buy houses, maybe fix them up and flip them, or any number of situations.
Exactly.
Yep. Okay. And so you can just like you showed me, you have that app where it can line up the data between the buyers and sellers, and then you can find a situation that meets their needs.
Yeah. So I have families, like end users, who want to buy houses with rent-to-own terms, and they go to my website. They fill out a web form there that just asks them, hey, what kind of house do you want? What area of town do you want? How much do you have to put down? How much can you afford per month? And then when they press submit on that, it makes an entry into my customer relationship management tool. And that program allows me to filter and search and kind of do a categorized lookup of different entries, so that I could search, let's say, find people who have $5,000 to put for a down payment or more. And it would eliminate everyone else, so that I could just look at that group of people and try to make a match with a house that just came up that probably would require $5,000 or more for a down payment. So I kind of structure it so that the less expensive homes or the smaller homes, I let people move into with less money down, and the larger, more expensive homes, I require a bigger down payment on those for rent to own. I also have people that are other investors that come to me and they want information about wholesale properties immediately when I acquire them. So sometimes it's possible for me to get a house that I had to write a purchase agreement on, and then look in my database for my really active cash buyer investors, and make a match. I'll say, this is this style of house in this area. I know that this investor that's on the top of my list here buys exactly that kind of house. So I'll just make a phone call usually so that I can get it sold that day. And I'll just sell the contract itself, and I'll never have to bother about the actual house. Yeah. So I can just hand the contract off to that investor, and then he can go do the fix up on the house, or whatever sort of investor that is. It might be a rehabber, it might be someone who buys and holds the property for future appreciation. There's all kinds of different investors that want a line on wholesale priced properties and are able to come with cash right now. So yeah, my whole setup with my website and my CRM program allows me to just make quick matches. And I'm also doing helping friends find other friends who want to borrow money for their real estate projects, helping them find my other friends who want to lend money for real estate projects, short-term, fast money. And that's pretty cool as well.
Yep. So you have the situations where you can live in the house for free, or you maybe even make a profit later by selling the house onto an investor, or you can flip the house immediately. Are there any other common arrangements which you have?
Well, there's a multiple
Yep.
different, I think, real estate strategies. So I have an investor network, and each of the other investors tends to do something different. So some develop land, and some buy properties that are beat up and then do the fix up. Some buy properties that are pretty much good right now, and they just put tenants in them and hold them. There's people who buy properties and divide them up. So there's all kinds of different ways to buy properties, or different strategies to increase value on those properties. My two favorite are lease options, and then I'll buy and then sell on a lease option. So that's a lease option wrap. I'll have an option, and then I'll sell an option that's even greater than mine to another party. And so when they cash me out, I cash out the seller who sold me the option. And there's money, there's a spread there. The other way that I like to buy properties is wholesale. That means I make an arrangement with a seller to come with cash within 30 days, 15 days. It depends on how good of a discount there is. If it's a really good discount, I can come with cash tomorrow. If it's an all right discount, I give myself 30 days. And then with those, I'll find one of my other investors and we'll usually partner on the deal, depending on the size of the project and what the exit strategy would be. So if I got a wholesale priced property because it's really beat up, then I would call one of my rehabber investors that will come in. Maybe they have a construction crew and will come in and get that project up to a retail condition. Yeah. So those are my two favorite ways: lease options and wholesaling. Those are my two favorite techniques for acquiring and getting rid of properties.
So last night you were talking about how there's these three concepts of ownership, control, and debt, and a lot of people blend these three together, but they're actually quite separate. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, sure. Just like I was talking about, there's two different markets for properties. One is the retail market, and then one is the investment market. Right? It's the same thing with mentalities. So retail buyers usually have the idea of ownership, the debt, and the
Control.
and the usage or the control.
Right.
And by ownership, I mean not the rights of ownership, but the title work or who the house is recorded to. So those three concepts are usually all tied together in the retail world. The person who buys the house and gets on title is the person who lives in the house. That's the same person who pays the mortgage. In the retail world, those three things are not necessarily tied together. Often they're not. You can sometimes increase value of a property by divorcing those three concepts. So going back to this example of the house I live in at the moment, the house in Washington State, someone else is on the title because I only bought an option on it. My option is notarized, and I sometimes even record options, but that doesn't transfer the title to me. It just transfers all the rights of ownership. So I get to control a property. I could live in it, or I could fill it with other renters. That's what that does, but it doesn't transfer the title to me. So it still technically belongs to, like legally belongs to the seller until I exercise my option and actually purchase the house. But I'm not interested in owning the house. I'm interested in controlling the house. I want to lock in a price now so that I can capture any appreciation. But I don't necessarily want to receive the tax bill, which is all the title is good for. So in this situation, someone else is the recorded owner. I am the one who gets the rights of usage and the rights of ownership. And then I rent out these rooms. So it's actually these other parties that are making the payment. So that's kind of like a corporate externality in that I get all the benefit, but someone else has the responsibility of the payments, right? So, and there's different ways to divorce those three concepts in all kinds of properties: commercial, raw land, and then residential. Yeah, so that's important to know that those three things in the investment world don't have to be together.
So having an option, you are speculating to some extent that the house is going to appreciate. But then if it depreciates, I guess you could just walk away, or you could refer the seller to somebody else so they can move the house quickly.
Exactly. In the rare event that there wasn't a significant discount when you agreed on the option and on the price, and also that the market doesn't rise during that 24 months, you have the option to give the property back to the previous owner. I mean, that's the great thing about an option, is that it's not an obligation.
Yep.
Yeah, so it's very rare that a property doesn't appreciate. And normally I don't go live in my lease option purchases. I'll acquire a house with a lease option, and then I'll sell an option to another party. And they are banking on the opportunity of future appreciation from their contract price. during the next 24 months. Yeah, so then again, you know, if the market does not go up, they can return the house to me if they say, hey, my bank doesn't think that this is financeable.
Yep.
And then I have the option to, you know, the opportunity to sell an option to another party or to give the house back to the previous seller.
Cool. Yeah. So if someone wants to start out, maybe if they don't even have any money, could they start doing something like this?
They definitely could, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, just if you live in an area and you see those We Buy Houses signs around, you should give a call, because that investor knows people who sell houses with rent-to-own terms. So even though you are not trying to sell a house, if you see a We Buy Houses sign, call that investor and say, hey, I'm looking for a rent-to-own home. Can you connect me with a rent-to-own home that you might have, or can you refer me to one of your investor friends who might do that? And you can usually, as a retail end user that's going to live in the home, you can usually acquire a rent-to-own home in the United States for as little as $3,500 down. And that locks in a price right now, and that even if the house goes up significantly during the term that you have, the time frame that you have before you have to get your loan completed, you keep all that extra appreciation as the buyer. So I'll give an example. There was a crazy time in Las Vegas where you could make money by standing in line at one of the developers' showrooms. There was so much appreciation that you could walk into a showroom, get a contract on a house that wasn't going to be complete for 6 months, come back to that showroom in 5 months and sell your contract to some other retail buyer who was there. And you could even sell them your contract at a discount and still make $30,000 or $40,000, because there was so much appreciation happening in between every phase of a development. So it was an incredible time. This was in the 2003, 2004, 2005 era in Las Vegas. Anyway, I had a property that I had agreed to, I had sold an option on for, I think, $190,000 for this strange kind of zero lot line property. And in the next 24 months of the purchaser's option time, the house had appreciated $100,000, so it was now worth $290,000. And so he still only had to pay. He made all his payments on time and lived up to the agreement, right? So he still only had to pay $190,000 for that house, and he captured the $100,000 worth of appreciation. And I think he bought that option for $5,000 in the beginning. So in an appreciating market, buying options on houses can be an incredible opportunity.
And so that was, like you mentioned, 2003, 2004. That was like in the middle of the housing boom in the United States. The market has maybe settled down a bit now, but these kind of deals are still entirely possible. Or maybe not that exact kind of deal, but it's still possible to make money.
Rent-to-owns are always possible.
Yep.
Even when the seller doesn't know it. As a buyer, if you know how to construct a rent-to-own contract, you can explain that to a seller just by asking them, hey, what if we could agree on this price, but give me 24 months to get my bank loan completed, and I'll make you a monthly payment in the meantime. There's a lot of owners that the only reason they're not selling that way is because they haven't thought of it. But the difference in what kind of appreciation you can capture really depends on the volatility of your local market. So in Las Vegas or Phoenix, these are places that have high volatility. They're either in a skyrocket appreciation or roller coaster falling off a cliff descent.
Yep.
So that's great though for people who see the opportunities in volatile markets. If you're a buy and hold sort of investor, or kind of older money, we call them, where they're more conservative in their movements. These investors aren't as keen about volatile markets. They would prefer a a much more stable market with gentle appreciation over time.
So doing this, making these kind of rent to buy contracts and creating options, you're actually providing the service in one sense of smoothing out the market prices or reducing the volatility for the sellers.
Well, in the end, when the buyer completes their bank loan, it still is based on appraisals. So the market values, I'm not sure if rent-to-own opportunities of a market that's saturated with rent-to-own opportunities affect the volatility or not.
Right.
I'm not sure about if it has a stabilizing effect or a.
But I mean to say, from the seller's perspective, they don't have to worry so much about the volatility, because the option that you've created helps them not worry about that.
Well, that's right. They can get their house sold. Well, one real benefit to selling with a lease and an option for the seller is that you can get your house sold faster, get the payments being made by someone else right now if your payments are the issue for your motivation to sell, and you can get closer to the price you want. Sometimes people have difficulty selling their house because it's not priced correctly. Well, if you have a house for sale that's only worth, say, $100,000, adding and let's say you want $120,000 for it, there's not going to be a sale because your desired sales price and the market price aren't close enough. But when you add terms that are favorable and increase the size of your potential buyer pool, right? You increase the demand and then you increase the price. So there's extra value there. You're selling the house and the terms, which make it easier for the buyer. So that in itself has value. So those two things together can get you a higher price as a seller.
So when people look at doing this kind of thing, do they need to talk to a lawyer to write up a contract?
People like to talk to lawyers, and lawyers like to have people pay them.
Of course.
But just like you and I agreed to sit down and do this interview right now, anything that's voluntary can be negotiated and written down on a piece of paper.
Yep.
So almost never do we use lawyers for simple agreements like lease options or wholesale house purchases.
Okay.
Only when a deal becomes really convoluted, let's say a multi-phase commercial or triple net leases or properties that are being divided, let's say turned into mixed use, then we'll have some kind of a specialist help arrange the contracts. But for simple, I want to buy your house, you want to sell your house, those kind of everyday purchases, there's no need for a lawyer.
Okay, and you would just write down the terms and say, I'll pay you this much per month for 24 months, and at the end I have the option to buy it.
You could make it that simple, yeah, definitely.
Okay.
We use just a contract that we use all the time. When we buy, we use a lease and an option that's in one contract. And when we sell lease options, we have a rental agreement that's one contract, and we have an option agreement that's another contract. But the option agreement is like a one-page letter-sized paper that explains the terms of the option, and it references the lease, that they have to live up to the agreements of the lease during their option period. And the lease is a standalone document that just has all the terms of their regular monthly rental.
Okay, so you just have some templates there, which a lawyer has drawn up originally, or it's just somebody who's
I've actually constructed my contracts over time from my experiences, and I've tried to make them efficient,
Yep.
so that they explain everything that they need to
Yep.
in kind of an everyday English, so that the other party feels comfortable and understands the contracts as we go through it right there at their kitchen table usually.
So it's all written in plain English, not in legalese.
Exactly. Yeah, it says, I, Anam Paiseanta, agree to buy this property whose address is, you fill that in, from the seller whose name is, you fill that in.
Yep.
It just basically goes down just exactly like that. We go through it together and fill it out together. So it's an inclusive process. So it's instead of adversarial arrangements, like seating positions at the table, it's usually like people like me and the seller sitting together and saying like, okay, so if I remember correctly, you said that a payment of $1,200 a month would be a solution for you. And usually we just go over the terms that they've kind of described to me in the first place.
Yep.
If those terms weren't agreeable to me, the contract never hits the table. If they were agreeable to me, then that's when we proceed.
Okay.
So there's not a whole lot of negotiation. It's definitely not adversarial. It's more like I just talk to them long enough for them to feel comfortable to tell me what they need.
Okay. So you never really get into haggling or bargaining or saying, it has to be this price, or can you give me 90,000 or anything like that?
Well, with a regular house seller, no.
Yep.
I don't force deals ever, because if that kind of comes from a scarcity mentality.
Yep.
And I kind of tend towards an abundance mentality. So for me, I just approach the person who called me with the mindset of trying to come up with solutions. And that's really all I think about. Because if I can come up with a solution, I'm adding value. And if I'm adding value, there will be a payment. I just never worry about that. And if I can't add value with anything that I do or my other investors in my network, then I refer them, that's because they're in a retail situation. So I refer them to someone who deals with retail houses. So in a way, that in itself is adding value. And that comes back to me later. That realtor who receives that connection will later on pass deals my way. So it all works out. So I never force a deal with house sellers. I sometimes will haggle with my other investors that are in my network, and it's just kind of how we are. We're all we're cooperative, but also a little bit competitive. So there's kind of a brotherhood in the harshness that we use when dealing with each other. So, it's kind of fun.
Cool. So are there any other principles that people should keep in mind if they're trying to get into this? I guess it's about network building, relatability, looking for solutions. Those three things, would you say those are important, or are there other things which are more important?
If someone wanted to get into this to be a real estate investor, is that what you mean? To be an investor, to do this over and over and over again, or someone who just wants to find a rent-to-own house as a end user?
Let's see. Well, let's say, doing it over and over.
As an investor? Sure.
Yeah.
Well, I would say that there's plenty of information about how to get started on YouTube. I could give a shout out to some of the people who have information that I think is extremely valuable. If you want to learn about wholesaling houses, I would say listen to Sean Terry and his podcast called Flip to Freedom. And there's some excellent books on. One thing I want to say about Sean Terry is this man's an amazing man. You can tell that he's not a guru who's trying to make money off of his information, because he never charges for anything. He really does make all of his money on his actual real estate investing. So his podcasts are free, and even this book that he wrote, which is, I think it's called something like Quit Your Job in 19 Weeks or Less, something like that, with wholesaling properties. I forget the actual, but he gives that away for free. And unlike a lot of books that gurus put out, real estate investment gurus, is every single step of the process is available right there in that book. There's even a contract for a purchase and sale agreement in the book. So amazing man, and I want to say thanks to Sean Terry. On the lease option side, Peter Conti and David Finkel have some great books on how to construct leased option deals. But there's also, these days there's all this stuff is in video right on YouTube. You can search this stuff and find out exactly how to do it. And you can network with investors in your area and get contracts from them if you don't have your own contracts to use. And then the rest of it is keep your heart and your mind focused on adding value to someone else. Mm-hmm. And if you constantly keep your compass pointed in that direction, you will get paid. So if you start worrying about how much money am I going to make or any of that stuff, you'll tend to back up your flow. So for me, whenever I go into a property, and this actually is a negotiating technique in a way, because when you go into a property not caring about if you make a purchase or not, only caring about solving some problem the seller has, right? You become the unmotivated buyer, which helps them feel comfortable. And it also helps them feel motivated to talk you into the deal. So it's strange, but by not worrying about your profit and worrying about helping them, you actually facilitate more deals. Because whenever, whoever's less motivated in a exchange gets the better deal and has more negotiating power.
Right. And it also must take off a lot of pressure. Like, you don't have to feel nervous because all you're doing is going there to help them.
Exactly. Like the house that I referenced earlier. I was working it into my schedule. That house happened to be on my way to another appointment. And I called up the seller and said, hey, are you home? I'm going through your neighborhood. I can stop by and look at the house real quick. Well, we constructed a deal right then and there.
Great.
And I wasn't even, it was just kind of like spur of the moment thing. I said, oh, there's this one house that wants me to stop by in this neighborhood. I'll just call them, see if they're home. I'm going through that area anyway. And it ended up being a great deal, and it's gonna net me about $50,000. And here's the other thing about that deal. When she was telling me about her situation and basically explaining to me everything that I could do to solve her problems, right? I set it up in a way that when I sell the property, any profit I make, she gets 10% of. And this is just this little thing I do to kind of help the flow of energy. I'm getting a little esoteric here, but by making them kind of a co-investor with me, it feels like a totally different kind of transaction. So the more money I make, the more money the seller makes. And so it keeps it from being adversarial. It turns the seller into a teammate with me. And it's just 10% to me. I mean, it's totally worth it. And it makes the seller feel connected to me all the way through the process instead of just at the beginning. And so they're interested in me working on the house if it needs it, or adding value in some other way. It makes them interested in me being able to sell the house at a higher price, and it keeps them on my side of the table throughout the whole process. And I think it also does something for karma, or at least some kind of positivity in the whole transaction, and it makes their life better, not only in the beginning but also throughout the thing. So it's great.
Yeah. So I assume that once you help a lot of sellers like this, they must, if they know someone who's selling a house, they'll probably say, I know Anam can help you with that,
right,
and pass on your details.
Word of mouth is huge.
Yeah.
If you do good to people, they'll tell their friends, and if you do bad to people, they'll tell their friends. So
Yep.
yeah.
Yep. Cool. Okay. Yeah, that's all the questions I have. How can we find more information about the Connector app? Or is it's still in the development?
You can go to our website, which is connector.ninja, or you can find us on Facebook, just Connector app on Facebook. And we're excited for that to come out in the next few months. It'll come out first for iPhone, and then be ported over to Android within a few months after that. So,
great. Yeah, so that could be a great way for people to get together, especially for peaceful anarchists around the world looking to make some connections and maybe talk about entrepreneurship or something like that.
Definitely, and I really believe that the awakening phase of our particular movement has been going for quite a while now. And now we need to enter the phase of conscious and intentional agorist networks. So we need to start forming trade routes and communities and support that help make the government obsolete, so that we can increase the peace. So that is one of my main motivations for the Connector app. And so it's being introduced to our community first, but it really is monumentally helpful for the whole world, because right now we make friendships by happening to be at the same job or school at the same time as another person, and then trying to do the effort to find out if we're a match for friendship or a match for dates. And this is like backwards to me. It seems like you should see someone's stats and say, oh, that is my kind of person, then go meet them. Yeah, exactly. So it turns the way we make relationships completely backwards, and I think it turns them right way around. So that we are spending time with and effort to develop relationships with people we already know that we're a match with. So it's going to be huge. Very excited about its potential and how much it can help.
Yep. Yeah, I was watching an interview the other day. I think I was with Roger Ver, and he said that it's crazy how you have something like Tinder, which dating has been the same for centuries, even millennia to some extent, and now you have this app which changes the game, like within a few years. And people meet each other in a whole different way, and the Connector app is going to expand that even more. So you can be making friends, like maybe you even just touch down in the city for a couple of nights and meet up with the people who are interesting to you.
Yeah, you can meet people who are already your friends that you've just never met yet, and have dinner with them or exactly. Yep. And dating too, to be able to look at all the stats of a potential partner and see that they're on a map somewhere near you, so that when you do make that first contact, all you have to do is say, look at my profile. We are the same kind of person, and there's such a shortcut to rapport that way. Yeah, so it's going to be great.
Yeah, I agree. Great. Any final notes? Anything else you want to add?
I just want to tell the people that take the most out of this current moment and your experience now.
Yeah, let's do that.
Live with passion and live with intention.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great. Thanks so much, Adam.
Yeah, man.